Robert Plank Show, episode 275, Instagram ads. Use the right social media branding and advertising to get instant scroll recognition at a maximum return on investment with Christina Baldassarre. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the show. We're joined today by Christina Baldassarre, and Christina creates successful brands. And in her last year of college, she started Zebra Advertisement, a digital marketing agency, and the company grew to manage over $1 billion in advertising budget in just 5 years. And during her journey, she became a leading brand strategist, a successful entrepreneur, and a sought-after speaker. And Zebra Advertisement has been named one of the most entrepreneurial companies in America today by Entrepreneur Magazine, and their clients include Microsoft, Bing, Facebook, Google Yellow Pages, State Farm, and over 21,000 other businesses. Lots of cool stuff, super impressive. Christina, how are things today?
Very good, thanks. How are things with you?
Better than ever, fantastic, just living the dream, being awesome, full-time job, but someone's got to do it, right?
Yeah, sounds good.
Cool. And so, I mean, in your business and stuff like that's happening, I mean, what's got you amped up and fired up lately?
I think a lot of Instagram and Facebook changes. And I think one thing that really kind of took me by surprise this year is that a lot of SEO requests are coming in for Instagram management. So, a lot of things that were probably predicted, like native ads and a lot of things like that, are really trendy right now. But I didn't really see the SEO trend coming for Instagram as strong as it came. I think we've seen about like a 29% increase in demand for SEO management on Instagram.
Awesome. And so when you talk about Instagram management, what does that entail exactly?
So it usually entails coming up with different concepts. So it's usually called post formats. So let's say you have an Instagram account either for yourself or for business, and you just kind of don't have the time to take care of it, or you're just posting, for the sake of having something posted. So we want to make that a little bit more strategic and come up with different formats that you approve of. And then it's basically easier for somebody, if you outsource it, to just create within those formats. Plus, it makes your brand really look cohesive. So, besides fonts and colors and things like that, the layout is really what people recognize the most. So it's like if you think of the Ellen DeGeneres show, if you blur out her head on a photo, you still know it's her because of the way she dresses. And, yes, also because of the colors of her clothing and her product line and her, show backdrop and all of that. But you could blur out her logo or her face anytime and you would still know it's her. So that's kind of the same effect you want to achieve on Instagram. And now people basically also want to make sure that if people use Instagram as a search engine, that their product or service is found. So they basically have us go over existing posts and create new posts based on specific focus keywords and hashtags, which we've never seen as many requests. This year is really insane. Like, we've seen more requests this year for that specific service than anything else.
Crazy. And so along the lines of that sort of Ellen DeGeneres effect, where if you blurred out her face, you could still somehow tell it's her based on like the way she dresses and all the colors and stuff like that. How do we all achieve that? I mean, is it a matter of like using the same fonts and colors everywhere, or is there some kind of secret?
It's definitely fonts and colors, but I think it's the implementation that really makes the difference. So let's say you sell a product, or you have a product line with a wide variety of products, or let's say you have an e-commerce store. What you could do is you choose specific colors for the backdrop of the product. So you have a product photo, and let's say all the backgrounds of that photo have like the same gray shade or the same beige shade. And basically what many people are missing is they have a logo, but now they don't know how to implement the colors of the logo or the feel of the logo into the rest of things. So there are two things I'd recommend getting. One is the HTML color codes of the logo. And you can get that from like a free website, like imagecolorpicker.com, for instance, is one of them. And I'm sure there are many others. And then you want to plug that in. So you get the HTML code. You want to plug that into like a PowerPoint presentation or like a free tool. Let's say use canva.com or anything like that. And you want to see where on the color wheel that HTML code shows up. So if it's really close to the center or really close to the outside. And then you know how trees have like those circular lines when you cut the tree, and you want to have the same thing with the color wheel. So if you pinpoint where your HTML color code is, you want to draw a circle that goes through that and that way you know on what hue you have to stay with your logo colors. So let's say your logo has just one color, or let's say it has two colors, and you need a third accent color. Most of the time, that's where people get it wrong because they don't stay on the same hue, and that way it doesn't look cohesive. So that's one thing, definitely the color. And the second thing is, besides sticking to the color palette, is if you have those templates that I talked about earlier, if you determine specific layouts, then the way the layout is set up becomes recognizable to people. So for instance, take like a large clothing brand like in H&M or Forever 21 or Zara or something like that. Even Macy's does that. They put the logo in the same color with the same background in the same spot every time. So if you Google H&M, I don't know, fashion, fall, winter, or something like this, which is, trendy topic right now because we're in March as we're recording this, you will see that the logo is always in one corner and the background behind the model is always the same color. And that way, it's that brand. So the way it's set up is always the same. And yes, the content may vary, but the formats are always the same. So when people look at it, I think of it as, instead of creating a scroll stopper, try to create a scroll recognition. So for instance, let's say you're placing a circle with a frame around it. Like Ariana Grande did that when she first became, really known. She had a white frame around all of her Instagrams, around all of her Facebook photos. That is something people recognize. And they didn't really know her face, but they did recognize there was the one with a white frame. So before anyone knew her songs, she was recognized by people because of how she presented it. So all branding really is perception management. So if you get those specific layouts right and use them again and again, with different content in the same layout, people will start recognizing your brand. And that's really important when you run campaigns like, let's say you run remarketing. You want people to know it's your brand because that's, one of the reasons why people run remarketing campaigns. They want you to, click on an ad, and if you don't buy, they want you to see your ad again. But if you don't realize it's the same ad again, you may not click on it, or you may say, oh, this doesn't really attract me. Or in the ideal scenario, you would say, oh yeah, I've been to that website before. Let me double check that again. And you'll recognize the brand. And people usually go to the website like 6-7 times before, making the decision to buy anything or contact anyone. So brand recognition is a really big deal.
Awesome. And you're sort of blowing my mind with all these small details, and you're making me think back to all those times when I was on a website, like it might have been like some piece of software, or it might have been a clothing website, and then I'll go off on some other website and see some of these retargeting ads. And you're totally right. Like sometimes I've seen retargeting ads that didn't really catch my attention, even though they clearly were from some website I had visited. But then those times when the colors were consistent, my brain somehow made those connections and maybe sort of recognized what ad was there and maybe pay attention to that retargeting ad. And I mean, I hadn't even realized that. Maybe on a subconscious level I did. But as you're explaining this with like the the color hues and making making the website match the ad and stuff like that, like I can totally relate, and I can totally get to what you're saying.
Yeah, there's a lot of subconscious, just the subconscious level to marketing that I think sometimes people don't realize, and it's uncomfortable to speak about sometimes because people feel manipulated. Remarketing basically stalks you online, and there's another thing that people find really creepy, but I'm going to share it because I think it's kind of interesting. So how most of the time the call to action button on a website is red, like the buy button or submit or something like this on a form.
Yeah.
So most of the time that's red. Even the MailChimp default version. So if you're running an email list, you're using MailChimp, maybe you know that. The default version of the MailChimp button is typically red. And that is done on purpose. It's not just coincidence. And it's because the color red triggers something subconsciously in your brain. So it appeals to the really ancient part of your brain. And it triggers a sense of urgency because it's associated with, danger and blood and fire and things like that. And there's nothing people can do about it. If you put a focus group in a room, which we have done, and you show them a red button, the heart rate goes up and there's nothing they can do about it. They don't notice it. They're not aware of it, but, put them in front of red and something happens. And that's why most of the time, red buttons do so much better. So if you ever hear anyone, oh, you should split test the button color, it's probably not as silly as it sounds at first.
Right, and even when the way you're describing that, where the focus group, they're reminded of blood and love, and their heart rate increases. It makes me think about like a red light. Like if I see just like a red traffic light or like a red light of any kind, I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to stop. I got to see what this thing is in front of me. Like brake lights even, right? Same concept.
Yeah, I mean, those are not by coincidence red, and it's similar all over the world. Interestingly, that the red color on the traffic light is always red, but and the color for the walking sign, so the green is actually white in some countries. So if let's say you go to Germany, where I grew up, there are some cities where the traffic light goes from red to white because green, doesn't do as much to the brain regarding, oh yeah, you're good to go. So white has actually been found to be more effective, but they found that out after, and red was probably a color chosen that kind of alerts people that brake lights on your car, traffic lights, and all of that. But the green or the white actually doesn't make as much of a difference to people because what matters most is the red that kind of makes them stop.
Right, right, and stop and notice the danger. If something's good to go, I don't care as much as like the threat coming towards me.
Yeah, interestingly, I thought that what Instagram is doing just now with sliders and also Facebook with carousel ads kind of appeals to the same concept because we kind of get startled by things that move all of a sudden. So things like a carousel ad and sliders on Instagram, and back in the day, if you think of SlideShare that was shared on Twitter, was a really big thing because it moves. And when GIFs first came out. So all of these new things are really interesting to me as a brand strategist because they appeal to the brain in a different way and people can't do anything about that. But you can take advantage of it if you know how it works.
Awesome. Yeah, and totally like take advantage of that without a lot of your viewers even knowing what the heck you're doing. And so, I mean, since we're talking about Instagram today, like I haven't messed around with Instagram too much, just on top like to the extent of like I have an account, I follow other accounts, I post different things and stuff like that. But so and you said that you play around or you set up Instagram ads for people. So can you kind of walk us through like what Instagram ads are all about and what kind of cool things that are unique to that platform as far as making ads?
Absolutely. The first cool thing is you don't need an Instagram account to run Instagram ads. So that's just the same thing. You can run YouTube ads without actually having a video. So there's things you can run ads on without having to fully commit to the platform, which I think is great because we already have, like 5 different social or 10 different social accounts that everybody has to manage. So sometimes when you're like, okay, I don't really have a visual product or I don't really know, what to put on my account, I don't really feel like doing Instagram, but you still want to reach people who are using the platform, you actually don't need an account. But given that you have one, Instagram ads is a placement of Facebook ads. So what you're actually doing when you run ads on Instagram is you're running a Facebook ad that has as a placement Instagram. So what that means is Facebook has over 3,500 targeting options right now, and those exact same targeting options are available on Instagram. So many people are just afraid of saying, like, oh, I have done like Twitter, but, I don't really know if I'm reaching the right people, or I don't really sell, or I don't really get anything out of it. It's going to be expensive. So if you run Facebook ads and they're successful to an extent, chances are really, really high that your Instagram ads are going to work out just as much because the targeting is identical.
Awesome. So lots of good stuff there. So we don't even need an Instagram account to run an ad. We can just run it through Facebook, and the targeting is all identical. And so, I mean, what are your thoughts on in terms of having one of those ads where I put out an ad and I want the ad to make money back, but I don't want to be too salesy, but I also don't want to be sort of too silly and cutesy. So, I mean, what are your thoughts on that? On like creating an ad that gets attention but also makes money somehow?
I think you definitely want to get the targeting right. So to me, it's always you have to test the image. So there are 2 thoughts I have on that. One is you should use Facebook Audience Insights, which Facebook Audience Insights. I can't pronounce it. Oh God, it's Monday. I'm sorry. It's called Facebook Audience Insights, and it's a free tool that is available through anyone's Facebook ad manager. And the other thought I'm going to share in a moment, but Facebook Audience Insights basically helps you determine exactly what people are like that you're targeting. So instead of just blasting it out to kind of everyone, how at Facebook it says you can reach 600 more people if you boost this post. You can't really determine who you're reaching. If you use the Power Editor instead, which is again a free tool available by the Facebook Ads Manager, then you can target those 3,500 targeting options that I mentioned earlier. So Audience Insights on Facebook, what it does is it tells you exactly what those people are like, what they buy, how often they buy. So let me make an example. So everyone knows age, gender, relationship status, but you can also know what kind of car people drive, what kind of car people are considering to purchase, what their annual household income is, if they own or lease their house, how much they spend on their pets, how much they spend on their kids, what kind of lifestyle they have. And Facebook basically puts together patterns among all of that and then tells you what different target groups are like. So let's say, more or less, you want to target people who earn at least that and that much per year, who are maybe in managerial positions or in law, or you want to have a B2B focus. You can choose all of that in audience insights. And then Facebook tells you what those people are like. So for instance, Facebook makes patterns among lifestyles. So one is called Summit Estates. One is called lavish lifestyles. There's skyboxes and suburbans, established elite, corporate cloud, sitting pretty apple pie families, solid single parents, country comfort. I mean, you name it. It's numerous lifestyles. And these are, again, lifestyles that Facebook just creates out of the blue that form patterns among all the heuristics you've typed in. And that really is so important when you're targeting, because if you target the right people, the chances of you making money with that ad are just so much higher. And the second part is you do need to test the image. So especially on Instagram, it's so visual, but also on Facebook, the image actually makes the biggest difference. So I think maybe 2.5 years ago, what we started doing is we started testing what part of the ad actually makes the most difference. So let's say everything is identical, but I swap out the headlines. Does it make a difference? If so, how much of a difference does it make? So it turns out the image actually makes 70% of a difference in the click-through rate and 16% of a difference for the sale. So you can have the exact same headline, the exact same description text, the exact same display URL, the exact same domain, everything the same except the image, and you can sell 16% more by choosing the right image. So that's a big deal if you're going on something like Instagram, where the image is really the most important part. But even on Facebook, so what we did, we tested like over 20,000 campaigns, and we targeted basically on Facebook people that never travel, that are on the countryside, like really rural areas, and we put the text in Japanese and like in some weird Japanese dialect that was supposed to be really rare. So we met someone, and they were like, oh yeah, I speak this really rare Japanese dialect. And we were like, that's awesome. You're going to be helping us with the test. So we targeted those people who had never traveled. Chances of them speaking Chinese, 0. So the ad was in Chinese. The photo was of the product that we felt they would actually buy. And we wanted to see, do those people still click? And they do. And interestingly, if you swap out the image, it's the exact same percentage. So people click on an ad because of the image, even if they do not understand the text. And then they buy at the same rate depending on what the image shows. So that to me was just mind-blowing, how much the image actually matters.
Yeah, that's crazy, and it sounds sort of encouraging and discouraging at the same time, right? Because it's sort of discouraging because it's like, well, like what I write doesn't matter. The image, is more important. But then it's also sort of encouraging because it's like, well, I don't have to write as much stuff. I can just like if the image is sort of the best bang for my buck, I can just try some of these different images and sort of find something crazy or attention getting or something that matches my brand. And I don't have to agonize over what exact words to have in that ad. It sounds like.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think if you have a large budget, let's say 100,000 a month or more, then I think it does start to matter, because each of the text lines influence at least the click-through rate up to anywhere from 0.5% to 10%. So why does that matter, click-through rate? Because you mentioned, let's say I want to focus on sales. Why does it matter? Well, most platforms give you a lower cost per click if your click-through rate is high, because your click-through rate is basically the ratio of how many people see the ad and click. So the more relevant your ad is, the more people click. And most platforms like Facebook and Google reward you for that by charging you less per click. So you get more out of your budget. So I think once you start getting to a larger budget, probably you should start testing the text as well. But, if you're on a small budget, or you're one-man show, or you just have a small business that just needs to get some sales in right now, then I would definitely, just say test the image.
Awesome. And so we mentioned a few times about how like sometimes you'll have these clients or work on these different projects, and we mentioned in your bio at the beginning that you've landed some of these humongous clients. And so, I mean, is there a certain size of business that you work with? Is there a business out there that might be like not the right fit or too small time for you at this point, or do you work on campaigns of any size?
We have 3 kind of client tiers. And each of them account for approximately a third of our business quantity-wise, And then, obviously the larger the business, the larger the project. So percentage wise, we probably make a lot more money with larger projects, but still approximately 30% of clients are small business owners. So that means, they're either have a small e-commerce or service business, or maybe a local business that includes authors, that includes people who are, interested in enhancing their personal brand. Then the other 30% is agencies that outsource to us because they may have a project that they can't really take care of all by themselves. It's maybe too large, or maybe they need a language they don't have in-house or something like this, or they just don't, have the time. And then the other 30% is large brands or large e-commerce, and just anyone who has a big budget and needs like something like 80,000 campaigns built in a week or something crazy like that.
Awesome. So you can scale as big as people want. So I'm looking at the like the different services that you guys provide, and I mean like tons of stuff, and even like the social media marketing. I mean, you do Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, Snapchat, all these cool things. And so when you're dealing with these clients of all these different sizes, and you're sort of seeing what difficulties that they're all having, I mean, is there a number one mistake or a number one difficulty that all these businesses have that you're helping?
I would say the difficulty is different per client tier. So I think for the small business owners, the biggest issue is that they don't have the patience to test as much. So let's say you're running an ad, it has 100 impressions, didn't get a click yet, they immediately want to pause it. I would recommend to have everything run at least for 1,000 impressions. So let's say you have a very small budget, okay, let's say you didn't get a click for 100 impressions, okay to pause it, but only if that budget gets allocated to something that already works. So most of the time, if you set up a new campaign with a small budget, the platforms aren't really configured for that. Let's say small budget, I mean like $10 to $30 a day. So Facebook and Google both struggle with that because the algorithm doesn't really work that well with the auction. So basically, when you use keywords, you enter into an auction, and the algorithm can't really figure out with that little of a budget how to get you the most clicks within your budget within that short amount of time. And if you run a campaign on a Monday and you don't have 100 clients by Friday, it's normal because the algorithm still needs to figure out how much each of those ads will cost you, given the budget that you have, what position you will get, and everything else. So most of the time, it's a patience thing that I feel is not really an issue, but one of the challenges, because small business owners are on a budget, so they have to decide relatively soon. And I think for the large businesses, it's just levels of approval, just from having the idea of something really cool to actually being able to implement it. Go through 12 lawyers in 5 different departments, need so and so many signatures. So the amount of time that passes between starting to create something and actually getting it done usually is quite a bit of time.
And so what's the solution for that? Or is it just a matter of knowing what you're getting yourself into?
Well, I think for the larger businesses, you do need to go through the lawyers, so there's no way around that. But there is a way to just kind of present everything at once, so they don't need to look at a variety of different things like every couple of days or so. But you basically present them with everything. They tell you ahead of time, here's some things to watch out for. And then, you may be familiar with the industry, so you already know what not to do. And then you're familiar with the brand, so okay, that has to look this or that way. And so before you start working on the final product, you already try to anticipate a lot of those approval processes, and then just try to submit one final version.
Awesome.
And then for the small businesses, what did I say? Oh yeah, the patience part. For the small business, I think you have to tell them what to expect. So say, here's what you can expect in week 1, week 2, week 2, week 3, 6 weeks from now, 3 months from now, and this is what's normal and this is what's not.
Cool. So it sounds like, I mean, so for the small business people, it's just a matter of sort of being patient and letting those impressions run, and then for everyone else, it's just a matter of kind of minimizing that back and forth and minimizing the decision making. Just saying, here's all of it laid out. Here's what we're going to do. Yes or no.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like for small business owners, small can be up to 100 employees still. So you can be one person, or you can have a couple of employees and still be considered small business. And what's so important for the small business also is not just the patience, but to realize what's the standard in their industry. So most of the time they run ads and then they're like, okay, this is the click-through rate I have. This is how many impressions I got. is this the way it's meant to be? Like, is it somehow, above the norm, or is it something not right with this? So I do think that you have to focus on your main business. And if you want to spend time on your campaign, at least you have to have an idea of whether it's going the way it should.
Cool. Good advice. I like it. Know what you want to accomplish, and then know when you're looking at those ads, is that result good or bad? And it sounds like people will have a lot easier time if they go to someone like you to create their ads or manage their ads for them, as opposed to trying it themselves. So can you kind of talk about your website and where people could find that, and what kind of things you have to offer there?
Well, I think depending on the topic you're looking for, so you can go on zebraadvertisement.com and just kind of get an overview of what we're doing, or you could go on ChristinaBaldassarre.com to just learn more about what I do. And if you're more into brand strategy, then contact me through there. But alternatively, it's always better to go to zebraadvertisement.com, because that's where I have the team ready to pick up the phones and get you the right expert on the line. So if you're really interested in something specific for e-commerce, like you want to run Etsy promotions or Amazon ads, then that's definitely the way to go. And if you want to speak to me specifically about something, then definitely my website is the way to go. Or alternatively, you just let the team know, like, hey, I want to speak to Christina, make an appointment, and we'll get you hooked up, like usually within 24 hours.
Awesome stuff. And so once again, those two websites, first of all, that's Christina Baldassarre, and Baldassarre is spelled BALDASSARRE.com, and then Zebra Advertisement, that's zebra as in the animal with the stripes, ZEBRA advertisement.com. And make sure you go there and check out what sort of advice Christina has to offer and what kind of services they do. And when you're ready to talk to Christina, then click on that contact button on the top of the screen and either fill in the form or call that number or shoot an email and say, I want to talk to Christina to talk about my ads, whether that's Facebook ads, Instagram ads, whatever it is you need. Get in touch with Christina and she'll be able to help you. And so zebraadvertisement.com. And I want to thank you so much, Christina, for coming on the show and taking the time and talking us through some of your thought process as far as making sure that the branding matches, and Instagram ads and audience targeting and all these cool things that a lot of people aren't aware of, but all of our businesses need to get traffic. All of our businesses need to get new leads and customers and stuff like that. And so running these ads is a great way to do it. So thanks for stopping by the show, Christina.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it, and I also wanted to say, if people are hearing this and they don't want to outsource anything, but kind of just want to bounce off ideas, contact me on social. And if you have a specific question, and I know that other people want to know about the same thing, I can also just write an article on it or make a video about it. So that way I can answer some of the questions that alternatively people are like, I wish I could just kind of ask what your thoughts on that were, but I really don't want to hire anyone yet. You're probably not the only one asking that. So if there's a question that you've been dying to ask, or just wanting to discuss, then just reach out to me on social.
And where can they reach out to you there?
Wherever is their favorite platform, really. So Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, Medium, LinkedIn, YouTube, Tumblr. I'm a social addict, so pretty much whatever you're on, I'm probably on it at some point. But yeah, whatever is most comfortable, I'll for sure get back to.
Cool. And what username on those platforms?
It's always Christina Baldassarre, so it's just first name, last name, and wherever the character limit doesn't allow for it, I just cut off whatever letters don't fit. So typically, if you Google my name, I'm probably the first one that shows up.
Cool. So Google Christina Baldassarre, and we'll also link to those things in the show notes for today's episode. So ChristinaBaldassarre.com, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, Tumblr, all those find Christina Baldassarre, and then ZebraAdvertisement.com. So great stuff, and thanks for being on the show. And everyone, go to those websites right now, and we'll talk to you all again very soon. Want to listen to more fantastic episodes of The Robert Plank Show? Subscribe to us at robertplank.com/iTunes and browse past episodes at robertplank.com.